Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Raise the Brow with Nishka and Malaika. Some of you, more than others, are going to relate quite heavily with this story. I think we can all agree that relationships can be quite complicated sometimes, and add to that things like religion and caste and what state you're from and all of that. So here's a little ray of sunshine for you. Our guest today, a Muslim girl and a Hindu boy, found a way to make their love see the light of day. And to share their story, yet respect their anonymity, they'll be going by the names Simran and Ayaan.
So, Simran, you're a Muslim, and Ayaan, you're a Hindu, and yours is a interfaith marriage, or what we also call a mixed marriage. So, tell us about how you guys met.
Okay, should I go first or you want to go first?
You can take that one.
Okay, I'll go first. So Ayaan here came to my city, Bangalore, to actually study, pursue his, further studies and not further studies. Sorry, like he came to study civil engineering. That's where we both met. We met through common friends. I think it was our first year of college, and we were just passing by in the college lobby, and that's where we happened to meet each other because we had a common friend with us. So that's where we were introduced. And I still remember he had long hair, long curls, and I was like, oh my god, is bande ke baal ghosle ki tarah kyun hai?
Yeah, with better hair than you were just jealous. Naturally furred.
So yeah, in short, that's how we met.
Nice. And Ayaan, when did you realize that Simran is the person that you want to marry?
Oh, want to marry came much down the line. I mean, back in college, I was pretty clueless when it came to relationships. I mean, relationships outside of my family, of course. But at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do after college, what I really wanted to pursue professionally. I didn't even know how long I was going to be there in Bangalore for. So, and I think I made it clear to Simran that, things might change, and maybe this relationship might not stand the test of time. I mean, that's how most of the college relationships are. And it was one of, at least it was, well, it was first and only big relationship for me.
For both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, but back in college, like I had plans of going for my master's outside of India, and then he was clueless, I think, and he was like, you know what? Let me also give it a shot at that. So both of us started preparing for GRE together and giving our exams, TOEFL, and all that. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but coming back to the original question, it wasn't one or several. It actually took several moments for me to come to that point that, oh, yeah, I think she's the one for me. So I think as the relationship matured, there were several moments where that question keeps coming up: is she the one for the long haul? And you have to answer it multiple times to be sure. It cannot be. I mean, based on Bollywood movies, yeah, it's that one moment which comes and you're like, oh yeah, that's the one. But for me, it took a lot of moments, and I think that's a true test of a relationship too. Especially when you've given it that much time and you've gone through so much together. I think so it took me several moments. It was like, moments back in India, moments when we were here in the States, and moments even after, when we were studying here in the States or we were working. So it took several moments, but then eventually I thought that this relationship can outlast a lot of things. And I think, we have had this conversation between us that, yeah, love is one thing, but at the same time, partnership is another thing. And sometimes love fades away, but partnership can outlast a lot of other things. So I think that moment came here in the States when we were just out on our own, away from our support system, our comfort zone. That's when it came to me that two of us can face quite a lot of things on our own. So there was, I would say, 4 years into our lives here in States that moment came for me, that ultimate moment where you
that long.
Yeah.
Seriously?
No, I think I've told you this before.
4 years is a long time.
I know for you it was probably the second or third date, and you were drunk, and you started telling me that you want to have kids with me and you want to get a Labrador, and that really freaked me out. And I was like, dude, I don't think this is going to last for long because
I was drunk. Obviously, I was under influence, so I couldn't.
Yeah, but it was still third or fourth, so it can freak out any guy, who's just getting into any kind of relationship. So yeah,
it freaked me out the next day too. I'm like, what did I just say? I mean,
I was like, that's your mechanism to just drive people away pretty fast.
But he stuck around, so
yeah.
It was a test in a way.
Yeah, as I said, moments of testing your relationship. Yeah, it was probably one of those small tests. So you have to, I think, for me, it was like it just needs to outlast a lot of things for me to be able to be sure about this.
So fast forward to Ayaan realizing 4 years later and Simran realizing within 3 days that you guys want to be together. So the next step is obviously telling your families, right? So Simran, how did your parents react when you told them about Ayaan?
So my parents already knew Ayaan from college days because, being in mechanical engineering, we were just 6 girls and there were 200 guys. So Ayaan and along with my other friends would always come home for Eid biryani, and all these guys would, ye fuke aate the, and they used to make sure that we're going to finish all the, the 2 barrels of biryani that my mom would have made. So they would come, talk, and Ayaan, on the other hand, used to be very cautious. Like, he was nervous, like the first couple of times when he used to come home, he was like, I'm pretty sure your mom will know that it's me, like she'll get it out. And it's true, because moms are so, like, they have that sense, like they have the sixth sense somehow. And then a few days after his second visit to my home, he called me, and I was somewhere, my phone was on loud, and I had stored his name, and mom obviously saw that. She picked, and he cut the call. So that was like a second red flag for my mom. And my mom was like, kitna kameena hai, aake biryani khata hai, but he can't talk to me. And I was and I told him, like, why would you do that, Ayaan? Like, you have to, like, talk to her if she picks up the phone, and you already know her, you met her and everything. So please don't make it hard for me. But I'm the one who has to face all these questions at home. So anyway, fast forward to 2014. That's when I broke the news at home. And this was all done over Skype because I was here in the States and my parents were back in India. But I broke the news to my father first because I feel like being in the army, my father has been very open-minded, and he's much more practical than my mother. So so when it came to this, I told my dad, and he listened to me very calmly and with an open mind. He said, okay, fine, let's talk about this later. But like, he did try to ask, like, how far has this come in your relationship? Isn't it way for you to go back? And I'm like, Dad, we love each other. I don't think there is a point now where we can go back. But I would really like you to meet Ayaan, and talk to him, give him a chance at least, and then we'll take it from there. And then I get a call from my mom, and there was a lot of drama from her side. It was like, log kya kahenge. That was the very first thing that my mom said. And agreed, I understand that, because being in India, where societal pressure and your image in society is so important, that's the first thing that comes to any parent's mind. Mm-hmm. So then I was like, you know what? Sleep on it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. So the next day I called her, and this went on for like a good 2 months. Like, I just couldn't have a good conversation with her because she would always break down, and it in turn started affecting my mental health also. And I was like, look, I'm all by myself here. I have no one here. If my parents are like so upset with just this one thing, it was affecting me also. I had stopped eating. I had lost a lot of weight. When Ayaan saw me, like, 3 weeks after I had broken the news at home, he was like, "What is wrong with you? I can see your cheekbones. Like, you've really lost weight. You've become a skeleton." I like, "This is what is happening at home." So he was like, "Let me talk to them." I said, "No, let's just wait," because by the time we had decided that my parents would come see me, and I hadn't seen my parents in like 2.5 years because of visas again. Like,
Yeah.
I had transitioned from student visa to H-1B, and then I didn't have a visa stamp, so I was waiting for October to go back. But they were like, "No, we can't wait that long." I said, "Okay, so why don't you guys come here and stay with me?" And I've not even seen you guys in such a long time. So both my parents came. My mom hugged me because I was seeing her like after 2.5 years, and that feeling was so good.
Wow.
Yeah. And then uske baad, the next day we started talking, and they were like, "Okay, fine, we'll meet him." By then she had calmed down, she had calmed down a little, and she was like, "Okay, maybe this is something we can work it through." But then they were like, "Okay, what if he converts?" And I'm like, "No, that's not happening. He's not converting, and neither am I. We are just gonna have like a court marriage or something." And then yeah, so that was their initial first reaction. They met him, they asked him whatever questions they wanted to, they were satisfied, and then we took it forward.
Ayaan, how was it?
I know it sounds like very easy and smooth, but the process was actually very stressful.
How did this affect you emotionally and your relationship with your mom in any way?
Yeah, like the first 4 months, when my mom was like I think she was at her lowest point, and so was I, because I started second guessing my decision to marry Ayaan. I was like, is this guy even worth all this pain and torture that I'm putting my parents through?
Yeah, another one of those moments.
Yeah. So I used to get those thoughts like multiple times, but through the entirety of this whole situation, I had my sister as my support. Like, my sister and I are just like a year away, 1 year apart from each other, and we are very close. So there were times when she would be like, "Don't worry, I'm with mom, I'm taking care of her." And she knew Ayaan all along. She's like, "He's a nice guy. Mom and dad, like mom especially, is just overreacting. Just give her some time, she'll be okay." So that's what I did. I just waited. And like the old saying goes, time heals everything. So I just gave her time and space, and I was like, let's not talk to her for some time. So it was very hard for me not to talk to my mom every day, because I used to talk to her every day, like on my way to work. In the morning when she would wake up, it would be night here. So those 3 weeks when I didn't talk to her at all, they were not easy. Like, I really want to listen to her voice, but I'm like, you know what, it's fine. I'll talk to her when she's feeling better, and when she's, because you can't reason with a person who's emotionally that strained. So those 3 weeks were not easy. But yeah, like we came past that, and now we are back to talking again every day. And now I think honestly they like Ayaan better than me.
That sounds like a natural progression, right?
I guess.
Ayaan, how was it for you and your parents when you told them about Simran?
Yeah, so I think the dynamic was a little different in my family, because I'm the youngest of the siblings, and when it comes to guys, they generally have more freedom. No matter how progressive is the family, I think a guy is more comfortable introducing his girlfriends to his family than a girl can introduce her boyfriend to her family. So it was easier for me. I think my mom visited me a couple of times when I was in engineering college, and every other time, she would generally meet Simran, and she knew about her that we were in a relationship, but at the same time, yeah, she was one of those Punjabi moms who will always be on your back and keep asking, all right, when are you going to get married? Are you serious? Are you going to get married? Are you going to get married? And I think I stalled her for the longest time. So for her, it was not about who am I going to marry. It was about when am I going to get married.
That's a very typical Punjabi mom. And I think she asked this question back in college itself, and I'm like, what? That's
Yeah, so it was just about the when, and when am I going to pull the trigger. And at the same time, I think honestly for me it got a little rushed, because yeah, it got a little rushed because uh,
because of my sister.
no, because I think someone in your family, a close friend of yours, actually went to your mom and disclosed the news before Simran could break the news and to her herself. So someone had already done it, and that's why the families never got a chance to talk to each other, and that's why there were so many assumptions being made uh, before even any kind of interaction. So it got, but at my end, I think everyone was ready, but at the same time, they only wanted to make sure that if I was ready, they were like, they are ready to go ahead with it. But if I felt that I wasn't ready, if I felt like I'm a little uncomfortable, they're like, they'll back me if you want to push it out as much. And they're like, we can talk to her parents, and see if we can push it out. Because there was I would say the clock was ticking at your end, because I think in your parents' head they had a timeline in terms of when they wanted to get their daughters married, and that was so the only concern from my family side initially was that, are you comfortable based on when they want to do this? So that was the biggest thing. But there were certain things which you might be fine with an interreligion marriage, and it all sounds so dreamy and Bollywoody, Feed Zara stuff. But when it comes down to when you're closer to the marriage, there are certain nuances, because yeah, it's a I know it's a cliche, but it's true that in India it's all about getting the families together and making sure that they gel along with each other. So I think there were little trepidations on my side when we were closer to the marriage, because my parents were trying to think that, how will the communities interact with each other, and how will those interactions go. So they were a little concerned about that when we got closer to the details.
I'll tell you why. Because, as Punjabis, the biggest thing you look forward to at a wedding is daru.
Yeah, I mean, alcohol, food. Well, there are no questions around food, because yeah, there was always good biryani on the cards. But yeah, it was about how they want to do the ceremonies, how they want to handle the whole liquor situation, and it's like flashy versus maybe a simpler wedding. Slightly simple, I will not say, because I don't think simple weddings exist in India. But so it was all those nuances which they were more concerned about rather than anything else.
Which I think was valid, and that's the only reason why we kind of decided to get married here, get our marriage registered here in the US, because it was just an easier process. And later, they were like, you know what? I think it's better if we have two separate ceremonies, just so that, just like an eye wash for our relatives. And I get it. I was like, yeah, you know what? We will support you on that, as long as you don't call too many people, because you know how Indian weddings can go out of control when it comes to the attendees, the
Yeah,
audience.
and I think we had three subgroups when it came to the attendees. There were the people who we wanted to isolate them in Bangalore and then in Punjab.
Yeah.
So we kept three groups. One was our core inner circle, who would be attending both the ceremonies, and they understood all the factors involved, and they were there to actually celebrate the wedding. They weren't they weren't paying attention to the interreligion thing at all.
Like your immediate circle.
The second group on her side, who were conservative, and for whom we had to do a couple of those ceremonies just as an eye wash. And then there were people on my side as well. So those two groups, we made sure that we kept them isolated from each other, because I mean, we knew that nothing is really going to happen, but at the same time we wanted to limit the interaction between those two groups, who who cannot easily absorb the idea of interreligion marriage in this day and age yet.
I feel like it still happens in India. Like when people find out that, oh, we are like, a Hindu-Muslim couple, they raise their brow and they're like, oh, how did this happen?
You just promoted the podcast as well.
Yeah, pretty much. It's surprising how in this day and age, it still raises everyone's brows. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are people out in India who are crazy, who are very fundamental when it comes to their religion and all those things. There are people who are fine with, hanging out with people from different religions, but they also maintain distance in the sense that, we are comfortable with having people over for Eid or Diwali or vice versa. But they're not going to get into, tying up relationships with a family from another relationship. I have a lot of friends who welcome friends and other people from other religions and cultures into their homes, into their families, but at the same time they're not ready to tie a knot which is that permanent. So and then for me it's been an eye-opener with respect to some of the people I know very closely, that they'll have people from all faiths around them, but when it comes to tying that serious knot, whether it's professionally or personally or whatever, that's when you see the discomfort coming out. And then there are people who don't give a shit about anything. And I have come across people like that who don't really care in this day and age that, if my son or daughter is dating someone from another country, another religion, another culture, there are people there, but they are lesser of those people at this point. And when I say these people, I mean the people belonging to our parents' generation. There are people in that generation with that open-mindedness. But at the same time, I think by the time it comes to our generation, I think we will pretty much eliminate most of that discomfort when it comes down to us. I mean, it's going to take more time in India. With stuff happening back home, it's going to take longer for us to get to that stage than some of the other people.
About that though, because you specified specifically with your parents' generation or our parents' generation, would you would you say the same about your peers as well, or as our generation they were just okay with it or just more accepting, or it didn't matter to your peers? Or did you think that at the end of it, when it did come to actually getting married and actually settling down, there were some nuances where even people in your peer circle felt that, oh, I wouldn't do that, I'd be okay being friends, but I wouldn't get married?
Yes. So we've had a few close friends who did say that, I can't believe this is happening and your parents have actually agreed, because if I were in your place, they probably would have just cut all ties with me. And I'm like,
I think when you talk about people from our generation, there are people who who completely support this idea, but at the same time they're just too scared to approach this topic with their parents. They will never. I think I was lucky in the sense that I could approach a lot of topics with my parents about it, which were considered slightly controversial and stuff, but they were friends who couldn't even
digest this fact that we were getting married, right?
No, I'm talking about them. If, for example, if they like a person from another religion, they would have never followed up on it because they knew that the answer is always going to be no.
Like they didn't even try. And I'm like, you need to at least try, otherwise you'll repent later. So
yeah.
And then there are other people who are like, as I said, similarly from the previous generation, they're fine hanging out with people from other religions, but they are not interested in doing something that permanent with them.
Permanent. Okay.
So throughout this process, when you guys are talking to your parents and getting, ready for finally having this ceremony and stuff, did this create any stress in your relationship as a couple?
Yes, it did. I mean, initially it did. Because at the time when, the parents met and everything, and they were like, when it came down to like those tiny details of the ceremonies and everything, they were like, okay, shadi kis style mein hogi? And we were like, okay, I think we need to, make our parents understand that we are getting married here, and we'll give them both the ceremonies, because that's when they started talking about, oh, you have a sister, you have to think about your sister, who'll marry your sister, and all that. And I'm like, don't worry about her. We'll make sure we find her a good guy. Who knows, she might already have someone. But so yeah, so I think there were a few. I would say 2 months before the wedding is when the parents started getting worked up about the guest list and who to invite, who not to invite. How is this going to be done? And they were like, oh, maybe we need like a pseudonym for Ayaan. And I'm like, no, that is not happening. People need to know that he's retaining his name, and we can just stage an eye wash for relatives to know that, okay, yeah, we are okay with this. And because there were some relatives on both our ends who still to date believe that we've converted. But that's fine. You believe whatever you want to believe. You're not going to come live in our house and see how we are living. So as long as, and that was again for our parents, because they live out there in that society and with that mindset. So I think that was needed.
Yeah. On my end, I was fighting another battle. I was fighting the battle between hosting a big wedding versus a small wedding. So I actually wanted a smaller wedding. I in fact wanted one wedding, and I was like, we can just filter out people and like drop the guest list from 300 people to 50 people who actually cared about us. And I knew that was an uphill battle, and that's a very tough battle to win, especially with Indian parents. So I lost that battle, and then after that fact, I was like, if you're going to do 2 of these ceremonies, it's going to be complicated, and I don't have the bandwidth to plan any of this, even as And I was like, if you're doing this, it's you guys are in charge of planning this whole thing, because it's going to get super complicated, and I don't want to be stressed at my own wedding. So I think they did a good job. I think Simran also did a good job, at least for her side of the ceremony. And for me, it was like just flying down from US and just wearing the right clothes and being at the right time at the right functions. That was pretty much it. So I actually played it pretty chill. Yeah, my clothes were decided. Everything was planned. The venue was decided. I was like, if you want to do this whole big fat Indian wedding, you can go ahead and do it. But I'm not giving any time in any of my time into planning this. So I was just in and out. But it was
yeah. I also remember, like, at the wedding, my father was very stressed out. Like, he was like, trying to see every, like any other bride's father, or he was like. I remember there was one time when I was with him, and this was after all the ceremony and everything was done, and we were just having food, and all of a sudden one of my elderly relatives comes, and he just couldn't shut his mouth, right? He had to like basically say, why did you have to do this? Like, you could have, hamare community mein to itte achhe ladke hain. And then I looked at my dad. I wanted to see what he's going to say. I don't want to say anything. And my dad was like, my dad is very like, he talks only when it's needed. He doesn't really like to, like, he confronts people when it's required. Otherwise, he just like plays it very cool and calm. But that day, he did say that, she's my daughter and I do care about her happiness. Aap aaye hain, bahut, shukriya. Please khana kha ke jaiyega. And then he just walked away from there. So I was like, oh, Dad, I can't believe you actually said that. And I was like, since then, I haven't spoken to that uncle at all. I'm like, I mean, if you had a problem, why did you even show up? Just to have freaky biryani?
That's exactly why.
Those are the kind of people I was trying to filter for the battle I was trying to fight. And I mean, there were people there, but I think, I think even at the ceremonies, you can see that you can easily distinguish people who are there to eat and people who are actually part of the wedding.
Yeah, this is usually a fun game to play at Indian weddings.
Yeah. There are also people who are not part of the wedding, but trying to be part of the wedding, even though no one gives a shit about them, and no one has interest in them with any responsibility, but they would try to be as if they are close.
Oh man, that's so
with
true.
my father, he was so stressed at the Bangalore wala ceremony, which is the nikah, but at the same time when we went to, he was so chill. He was so chill, like, he would just have the kulches and he was just enjoying the food.
Yeah, I think once he was done with this side of the ceremony, he was like, now I'm on vacation. Let the other people do the work. And I think it was the same for my side as well. I think they had a nice time. It was easy going for them when you're not in charge of taking care of everything. So yeah, I remember when we were having the regular shadi in Punjab, and I was just roaming around, and I knew that as soon as I left Bangalore, when I'm on home turf, I can drink as much as I want because I was on my best behavior during the whole nikah thing, and I was like, now I can unleash the Punjabi in me. And there was this one time I was just roaming around, and I saw your dad walking around with the plate full of kulchas, and I was like, this guy is having a time of his life now after all the hard work he's been through. So yeah, I think it was a different experience. I'm glad we had 3 ceremonies. Well, I'm counting the court marriage as well because it was just a small get together after that. It was fun, but at the same time, one thing which probably hasn't come out is like 3 ceremonies or whatever. It's exhausting. I mean,
it is.
People were asking where we were going to go for honeymoon, and I'm like, I just want to freaking stay home for the next 1 month. I just want to be in my bed. I don't want to attend any freaking dinners after a wedding. So it's exhausting, I would say. But at the same time, it's exhausting because you're spending so much time with your loved ones, and also trying to diffuse all these other situations around you. But at the same time, it's memorable. So yeah, it stays with you for a long time.
Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to what you said about your sister getting married, and this is for Simran. I'm assuming because of that sentence, she's a younger sister?
Yeah, she's my younger sister.
Okay. So then the assumption being that, if you marry a Hindu boy, then what if boys from our community don't come to meet her? So could you elaborate a little bit on that? Like, how did that affect you or, your relationship with your sister in any way? I know you said you guys were close, but, the fact that your wedding and your choice was being affected by बहन की शादी कैसे होगी?
Yeah, so just backtracking a little. So in the beginning, again, when I mentioned that I wanted to marry Ayaan, 3 biggest things my parents had an issue with, especially my mom, was log kya kahenge? A, B, choti behan se kaun shaadi karega? And C, what about your kids?
Oh, yeah, I remember that also.
Which religion are they going to follow? So these were the 3 important things that they wanted to address. Okay.
Yeah, and I did address it. I addressed it very well. I'm proud of myself, and I think your dad was also proud of me.
Yeah, I think he was.
Yeah.
So, and I think Ayaan addressed all of those when they came here to the US to meet me and also meet Ayaan. But yeah, I addressed it from my end, and they asked him the same questions when they met him face to face. So my thing was, okay, log kya kahenge? Why do you care? Like, I understand you're living in that society, but then there are still people in India who want to go along with their lives. They don't want to, interfere as much. I understand this question is more for the elderly relatives, but I'm like, for them, if you want, we'll have an eye wash. But then for all our close relatives, like our mamas, our buas, and our kya kehte hain, masis, like if you consider them close enough, tell them the truth. They'll understand and they'll support us. And that's exactly what happened. I was surprised to see my own, like my mamas and my mommy, like who's a little more conservative than us. They actually had a good time at our wedding, and they really enjoyed.
Yeah, I think many people are just afraid to begin the dialogue itself. Even though they have just in their head, they have so many different scenarios where they think that this is not going to go right. But I think once people start talking and starting that dialogue, it becomes easier with time to address that. But anyways, I think we have digressed far enough from our original question.
Coming back to your question. So for my sister, I told my mom, don't worry about her. We'll find a good family for her, and I'll make sure that I'll, be involved in that process right from the start. And luckily, like, we actually did find a good family for her from Hyderabad, and they were so, like, how do I put it? They understood everything, and they were like, you know what, we are glad that you are upfront about all this with us. We really appreciate it, because the truth mattered to them. Yes, I do, you know, like I did see a few families where they didn't even want to come talk to us. So this was the 5th or 6th family for my sister. So it was a process. It took a good 1 year, but there were a few families in the beginning who were very rude to us. And they were educated, Malaika. Like they were educated. They were their sons, like, you know, whom they were looking for a bride for. They were all like directors and managers at all these well-established firms like PwC or Citibank and all. Yeah, and I'm like, you guys are so educated, but you still have this small thinking, you know. So yeah, so that was a process for my sister. So there was a time when my sister, like, I remember she called me once and she broke down and she was like, you know, mom, dad are really stressed about this, and it's affecting me also because I'm getting rejected. You know, that the feeling of rejection is not taken well by everyone. So I was really there to, you know, support her. I in fact remember going back to India to be with her for some time. And I called her over here to stay with me for a month, because at the time she was not working. So she came here, she stayed with me, and I think she felt better after staying with me for a month. And that's when we found someone for her, and they started talking. And this is the same family I was telling you about. And now she's happily married. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a process, but it didn't really affect my relationship with my sister in a negative way. I was just feeling bad, you know, like she was going through a lot by herself, and I couldn't be there for her in India because she was living with my parents at the time.
And I would just like to add, I think it acted as a good filter to you know, to separate the fake people out from the real people.
Yeah.
You know, there are people, you know, as she said, who are well educated, are in the upper strata of the society, but inside they're hiding all these demons which they don't talk about out in the open. But at the same time, this is just a good test of a personality of a family, and you know how they are. You know, for us, it was. I mean, I can't go through all the experiences the sisters went through together, but I can just say that after my family met her sister's in-laws, I think
they really liked each other.
They really liked each other. In fact, I think they were, I don't know, smitten is the right word, but they were probably a little smitten by each, you know, because
by each other,
for them it was like, you know, it was like exploring new cultures together. And so it was a natural synergy when that happened. So I know that, you know, both of them went through a tough time. The entire family on her side went through a tough time with that initially. But I think at the end, it ended up working for them because it filtered all the people or the families who were not really nice on the inside, I'll say.
Yeah.
And because you mentioned your sisters as well, Ayaan, was there a moment where you know, told your sisters, and as you mentioned earlier, you have 2 older sisters?
Yeah, I do have 2 older
sisters. Telling them that I'm marrying a Muslim girl, was that a thing or?
Not at all, actually. I mean, I ended up growing with 3 moms instead of 1. So the youngest one was probably the most easiest to talk to and accessible because she is in Bangalore. And in fact, I think it was all the people from family. I think my sister, my younger sister, well, when I say younger, still older than me, but
older than him,
she's the one who met Simran's mom for the first time. So she was the flag bearer on our side of the family, and then eventually everyone got involved. And I think the equation with her was also the same. It was not a question of who. It was more of when, and are you ready, and do you feel comfortable? And in fact, my sister played a big part in calming her mom down every now and then. You know, she was like, "Auntie, you know, you don't have to be worried. You know, these things are happening in this day and age, and honestly, if they're happy together, that's all that matters." And at the same time, you don't have to worry about them. Let them make that decision. If they are ready to be married, we can figure out everything later. But because we never had that conversation, as soon as we told our parents, of course, she second guessed herself. Maybe I might have second guessed myself too, one or two times. But it's all about the two people who are getting married, that they are ready. And even after someone pops the question, the guy pops the question on the girl, and once you're going through that process, it is still, that question keeps popping up again and again, that am I doing the right thing? In fact, I think I got cold feet on one of the ceremonies. Like, I had literally had to down a shot of whiskey to calm my nerves, because for me it was not like that. Should I be getting married? It was like, am I ready to go through all these ceremonies and all this pomp and show? And that was the thing which I was worried about.
But it was quick.
Yeah, but again, we are digressing. But in terms of my sister, I mean, they were all cool about it right from the beginning. And all she asked me in terms of marriage was that, are you ready? Are you confident? And do you think that you're ready to pull the trigger? Because I don't want you to start a marriage which you're not ready for and like end up screwing things. So that was her only question towards me. But at the other end, I think everyone was chill at their side, and they were getting themselves mentally ready for the marriage. It was just a question of when.
And just because you brought it up in a totality of from your dating to then telling your parents about it, going through the motions of that, what you went through with your mom, then the log kya kahenge phase, and then planning these ceremonies, as he said, which is in itself its own ball game. Were there moments where either of you, either individually, even for like a blink, or spoke about it with each other, that would it be easier to part ways at any point of time in all of this, after you took the call to get married, obviously?
Yeah.
I don't think it ever came down to parting ways. It was about how can we make this a smooth process for both the parties involved. So we worked together as a team. So there were like, I'm the more short-tempered one in the relationship, and I lack patience. So in fact, there were times when he would calm me down, and I think that really helped, because had both of us had the same traits or similar traits, it probably would have been like, okay, it's best to just part ways. But then I think the beauty of our relationship was that we grew together over these past 10 years that we've been together with. And at the time, it was 6 years when we got married. So I think because a lot of the couples do grow away from each other, when they've been for such a long time. So I think for us, it was all about teamwork from the beginning. Yeah. It was all about how we can, make this smooth for both our parents, how we can make them understand together. So like, he would chime in, I would chime in, and that's how it was.
It takes me to the very first point I made, that in these times, love will not save your marriage. No. In these times, partnership will save your marriage, because you are actually each other's partner, and you know how to tackle which team,
how to
handle certain people in a certain way. And sometimes, when she is struggling handling her mom or someone else, I'll be like, have you tried this? Let's do this. Let's try this approach. So I know love is generally between, and maybe there's different kind of love. The partnership I'm calling is a kind of love, but for us, I think that's where you supplement the other person, and the other person that well, that maybe she or him cannot handle the situation on their own, and you have to step in and alleviate some of the pressure. So I think for us, the partnership came into play quite a lot during the marriage.
The whole like wedding planning tension.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Because love will only take you to a certain place. I think you have plenty of time to express your love to each other after that or before that. But these are the times when you have to be each other's partner and tag team and handle some of these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think when you get super emotional, it kind of plays into everything else, and that just leads to a lot more hiccups.
Yeah.
There were times when there was drama on side, and her drama would trigger someone else's drama, and it was a circle of drama spinning around us, that one person will we'll start it, and it'll flow down the chain, and it'll reach me, but from the opposite side of the family. So you had to diagnose these situations early on and like diffuse it.
So speaking of the drama, clearly there was quite a bit of it, right?
Yeah.
So how important was it for both of you as a couple to handle your families and your respective communities? Like, if they didn't give their blessing, would you have taken this big leap that you guys did?
Again, I think I probably would have used that as a filter. I mean, it's a true test of a personality for certain people. If there were people who wanted to come out and say that, I was like, yeah, that is nice knowing you guys for such a long time, but I think this is the end of the road for us. I think this is why we might not be compatible in the future, even as family or whatever. But fortunately, that didn't happen a lot on my side. And I think it didn't happen a lot on her side as well, at least in the close circle, that first segment of people who care about you and who are part of the marriage. It didn't happen there. It might have happened on the outer fringes. Yeah, but here's the beauty about it. Even if it happens on the fringes, you never get to know about it. At least I never got to know about it. Maybe you got more gossip. Oh, that chacha has said that shit or something like that.
But that was much later. Like, I was like, I don't care now. We are married.
Yeah,
I was like, how does it matter?
First of all,
you know how the Indian society is, right? They'll talk about you today. Tomorrow they'll find fresh gossip and they'll start talking about that other person tomorrow. So that's exactly what I had to tell my parents too.
Yeah,
but then going back to your question, like, is your question more on like, do you think we would have still been married without our parents' blessings? Was that your question?
Yeah, and also, like you're saying, people on the fringes, right? They do tend to put a lot of pressure on families, especially on the parents, and I think that is quite stressful as parents, and then it kind of affects your relationship as well. So, how important was that the community kind of settles down and accepts, or in a way just is okay with the fact that you guys are doing this?
So I think for me, it was important, but it wasn't a deal breaker because I wanted my first circle, like my immediate family members, to be happy with it. I was okay with if my extended relatives were not attending the wedding. I was totally okay with it as long as my parents, my sister, were happy with it. I was like, how does it matter? जब मियाँ और बीवी राजी है तो खाजी क्या करेगा? That's why I was like, even if the wedding is being attended by 50 people or 60 people, I'll be happy.
That was my initial plan. I mean, that drives us towards my initial plan, which never flew. But the smaller the wedding, the better. So, but it didn't happen. People will still come out for a good biryani. I mean, everything else is just gossip and gupshup. And they're like, okay, it's controversial, but let me have this mutton biryani first, and then we can talk about it later. And by the time that happens, the biggest advantage we had being out here in the States, you can escape all of that. You're always in a hurry. We were supposed to get back to work, and we didn't have a proper honeymoon. We delayed it intentionally because it was just exhausting. So we escaped all of that, and I don't think that it reached our parents in any cynical or in a way which was not right. And I think they didn't experience it. And it's like ripping a Band-Aid, and you're like, oh, it's done now.
Except for that one encounter which I had at my wedding with my dad and that elderly relative of mine. That was I haven't heard anything else.
But that's every wedding. I mean, if you go to any wedding, take any Indian marriage, there'll always be that one auntie and uncle who would make that controversial statement. I mean, उसके बिना नहीं, उस one dialogue के बिना शादी होती भी नहीं है.
बिल्कुल. It's almost like a rite of passage.
Yeah. Then we'll feel bad. Oh, मेरी शादी पे no one said that one controversial statement जो Bollywood movie में दिखाते हैं. There was no freaking drama in my wedding. I know a lot of people were like, कुछ हुआ ही नहीं यार शादी में.
Oh man, I love that.
Yeah.
So how did it feel to actually get married to each other and come back and be like, you know what? we did it. Shaadi ho gayi hamari. And what was your favorite memory from your wedding? Like all the ceremonies, you guys were exhausted and stuff, but like what stood out for both of you individually or even together?
I think for me, after we were back, I actually started missing the wedding days, and I'm like, oh my god, and it went by so quick. Like even though we had these different ceremonies in different cities, they went by real quick, like in a jiffy. And I was like, I really want to relive those moments. They were like really fun, with both our parents and stuff, both our parents and friends. So what really stood out for me was, like I mentioned, some of my immediate family members who were like very conservative, they danced at my wedding. And I, for once,
they knew the Punjabis were drunk.
Yeah, they knew, but they didn't say anything, and that's what I really respect about such people, is that you know it, but you don't want to confront it because you don't want to ruin the happiness of the moment,
They actually enjoyed it.
They enjoyed it, yeah.
And it was just pure joy which you could see coming out. I mean, there was I think one thing we forgot to cover is that, there was karobar happening around the nikah, and the Punjabis can't get through any ceremony without getting drunk. So there was a moment when there were people who were drunk on the dance floor, and there were people from her side of the family, the inner circle. And they didn't give a shit. I think they just enjoyed seeing those drunk Punjabis on the dance floor.
I think for me, that was the highlight of the wedding, where I could see people from both communities with different upbringings and different ideas still mingling with each other, or at least making an effort, And again, we made sure this was not that extreme set of people who had like extreme ideas. This was like, it was moderately conservative people. So I think that was the highlight of the wedding for me. And of course, getting married to him.
Kinda.
We finally did it after so long, and after all these, it was a rough path, but we still did it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you remember it for such a long time. All the hurdles in between
and obstacles that we had to go through was
they weren't big, I will say. I mean, I don't know. In hindsight, they don't look that big. Maybe at that time they look big. But having said that, those are not trivial. In fact, someone reached out to me and you as well 2 years back, and they were going through the same thing. They were like, how did they break the news? How did we went about the whole ceremonies? How did you do the eye wash? Like, where do you get a farji Maulvi or someone, who would do all of that stuff? And same on our side as well. Like, how do you so things are happening. There are ways around everything. I think the first step to a successful interreligion marriage is to get your inner circle on board, and if they're on board, everything else would be smoother than
and I think like the two people who are involved in this, who want to go through this, they have to be strong. They have to be strong enough to face all this drama that the families put in front of you, and also be like strong enough in their heads to explain it to their parents. Not just strong, but also be patient to the entire process, because it can be very strenuous.
You're literally like partners again. You're starting a new venture, you're starting a new startup, and you really have to get it on the right track initially early on.
Nice. We usually ask our guests, how do you think you can raise the bar for the community, and what in your life made you raise the brow? But I feel like this question doesn't apply to you guys at all, because in many ways you guys have, like Simran said, you've already raised many brows. And I think with the way you guys handle this, from just listening to your story, and this idea of a partnership more than anything else is in a way the best thing that we can do to raise the bar for ourselves and our community. So thank you for talking to us, and thank you for sharing your story.
Yes.
It was a pleasure. We can talk about other issues as well.
Thank you, guys, and I hope you have a nice weekend ahead.
Thank you. You too.
For those of you listening, if you have a story that you'd like to share, drop us a message and we would love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Raise the Brow. If you liked what you heard, Go ahead and tell your friends about us. And we will see you again next Friday.